Hello, hello, beautiful people. How are you? If you are just popping through because you just came across this on YouTube, as you were scrolling through your feed, hello and welcome to the replay. I am Rhonda Kennard, your ignited, fiery life and self care coach, trainer, and the CEO of A Life Ignited. And I am excited to once again be here, be present, be alive, be breathing to bring you another ignited, teachable moment. So, we have our music jam too. We have theme music. If you show up every week, you should know by now. So, just let a few people hop on. But we are going to start pretty shortly. A life ignited. Yes. All right, we'll stop that music now. I'm so excited about our conversation today because this is something that I initially did not plan on talking about. But make sure my microphone, yes, make sure the microphone is on. Of course it is. I can see here. Hello. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can see the microphone is on because I've got some visual clues here. We're all set. But yeah, so this wasn't something that I was going to talk about. I actually wanted to get back into our four-part series on the four C's of change because we did two of the four C's. And as you know, we are working out of the A Life Ignited, Ignite Your Inner Fuse book. This is my book that I published a couple of years ago. And in this book, there's a whole chapter on change. And in there, we talk about the four C's of change. And we've already talked about, I believe we've done commitment and creativity, but there are two more we need to do. Hello, thanks so much for hopping on. So I wanted to talk about that. But in the process of just going throughout my week and talking to people, it I was redirected to this particular conversation because it's a really important one to have. I know it very well, right? Finding happiness in a job that you absolutely hate. And I mean, like, hate. And we're going to talk about why you may be in that position where you hate your job. And if you're here, definitely come on, say hello, let me know who you are, where you're dialing in from, and if you have ever hated a job. Now, if you're working now, you may not want to put that into the chat, right? Because you know how social media is. You don't want your boss to come across you saying, oh, I totally hate my job, right? But many of us, millions of Americans, I was just looking up articles and things, and there are millions of Americans going to work every day that hate their jobs for so many different reasons. And I can totally relate to that because I spent years in different jobs, hating them for one reason or another. And not the whole time, but there were definitely pockets in my career as a financial software and technology professional where I just wasn't happy for so many different reasons. So, we're going to kind of talk about some of those reasons, but really what I want you to take from this is this shift because even now, some people, you may be watching this replay or you might be watching this live at a job now and it's your lunchtime or you're just sneaking away to watch this video and you totally hate like everything going on. And what I know for certain is the physical toll that can take on you, the mental toll, it can really mess with your self-esteem. And as you know or should know, a lot of what I talk about is self-care. And self-care is how you connect and commit to your best, boldest, most healthiest self. And so when I think about being in a space, any space, whether it's your job or around people or even in an organization, some of us are in organizations that we hate. And ding, 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 ding. I can speak to that too, where you show up, but you're really not fulfilled. And in many ways, you really hate it. Like you question why you're even there, and those things you can walk away from. But a job, listen, we know why you show up every day. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money, right? You have bills to pay. So I get that too. But what this is really about is the shift because what I want you to take away from this, and I want you to know right now, is that you absolutely can find happiness once you shift, right? Remember that word shift. Say that word shift. when you're having a bad moment during this day, I need you to think shift, right? How can I shift from this moment where I'm not happy? I'm just really indulging in the very negative thing, the what if worst case possibility. How can I shift that to a more empowering, positive and productive place where I'm not festering in this thing where I hate it. This is so terrible. Okay. So one of the reasons why, this is so near and dear to me is because I spent many, many years in a job I hated. And now let me say, I love the people, but I just hated the job. And we have different reasons why we hate jobs. So let me kind of look at my list because I just started thinking about, what are some reasons why we hate our jobs? And if you can think of some things, or let's say, other people, right? This isn't about you, just in case, your boss sees it. This isn't about you. If you know other people, or yeah, people are, upset in their jobs, why, kind of share that in the chat. But why are we mad? A lot of times we're mad because, the biggest thing, when I looked at things like, our boss doesn't listen, no one listens. Um, we have to deal with crap we don't want to deal with. We're being micromanaged. We felt disrespected by a coworker. A lot of this comes down to respect. And in many ways, we don't feel respected at work. And even if we're not making enough money, and, you could tie that back to we don't feel respected enough that the company is paying us enough. And so many of us will walk around in a job at work being mad every day because we feel like we're not getting paid what we should be. I had a coworker who was mad at all of us in my office, and we were a small, tight knit group. It was software and technology. So you typically have like small, communities and small teams. And she was mad at us because it was for review time. And you guys may know that you get your annual review. And this particular year, the leadership decided to do peer reviews, but they would be private or anonymous to the person whose review it was. So I would get a review, and maybe Cynthia on this call would do an anonymous peer review, but I didn't know it was her. So one of my coworkers got this peer review, and it just was not good. And because she didn't know who did it, she was mad at everybody. And I'm laughing because she was a whole mood. Okay. She was a whole mood the entire like 6 months after that review. But she was mad because she didn't feel respected. She didn't feel valued. And she didn't feel that her contribution was noticed. And in her mind, she was this great employee, and she was so awesome to work with. And, she was a great person, but she kind of was annoying sometimes. But, me personally, I would have never written that in her review that she, wasn't the best to work with, because I understand the power that reviews played for our bonuses and things. But, she was mad at all of us. She didn't feel respected, and she didn't feel honored and valued. And many times, this is what it comes down to. And I know for me, I can remember working at SunGard, and I tell this story in a Life Ignited, Ignite Your Inner Fuse, about how I walked around disgruntled. Let me see if I can find that quickly. I was disgruntled for months because I did not ask for a raise. I knew that I wasn't making as much. Yeah, I even say it here. If you have the book on page 47, I say being a disgruntled employee takes a lot of effort and negative energy. I was done carrying around the weight of the attitude chip on my shoulder, because basically, I was hired right out of college, but I was actually hired before I got my degree. So I came in at a low salary in comparison to what we were making at that time in technology. And I came in at 36. But what I noticed in the newspaper, because back then we used the newspaper to look for jobs, I noticed that our new hires, people that were coming in that I was training, they were starting them at 45 and 50. And yeah, they had more experience, but I was training them and I was an asset. And, on the day of them starting, I was more the asset than they were, and I just felt really disrespected every time I had to train a new person. So I was just mad about it. And at some point, I got tired of being mad. And I also understood the value in my voice and the value of what I was bringing to the table. And I had to get over that fear of being afraid to ask. One of the fears of asking came from just feeling like I should be grateful that I'm here, right? So a lot of times, we think we should be grateful that we're here, so we don't want to ask for more. but that has nothing to do with your value. And being grateful is, yeah, being thankful for this opportunity, but also using that opportunity, and stepping up, using it as a platform to go to the next level, but not being afraid to ask. So I would even suggest that some of the reasons we're mad and angry right now is out of fear, fear of confronting some situations that we need to. We're mad at people right now at work, and they don't even know we're mad because we haven't confronted, in a positive, productive way, what's bothering us. So back to my story with my raise. So I go, and I, say, listen, I go to Tom Gambino, amazing man. He was so nice. But I was so young, and, he was like 2 times my age. And I was just really scared to, approach him, but it was either be mad, get less money, or talk to this man and pray for a yes. So, I go to him, I tell him, listen, I know I'm not getting, paid what I'm worth, and I feel like I need a raise. And I can't wait. And this was May. So our reviews were at the end of the year. I can't wait that long. Like, I'm really upset about this because I know that I'm training people making more than me, and I know that I'm bringing so much to the table, and I'm helping them get acclimated and onboarded too. So, something's just, I feel like I need something. So Tom says, well, how much do you think you should make? And I tell him, now I had this conversation with my boyfriend, who's my husband now. And he's like, go in and ask for 50, and men do not have a problem with this. Like, he's like, go in and ask for 50, like, no feelings attached, just go do it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to seem like I'm being greedy. So, and he says, go in there and ask for 55. That's it. Go in there and ask for 55. So I go in and I'm talking to Tom, and I say, well, I think I deserve like 50. So he says, okay, well, I'll get back to you next week. And the date he said, I was like, oh, cool, because that's my 21st birthday. So I'm like, all right. He said, I'll get back to you next week. Next day, I come in the office, and he says, can I talk to you? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's only been like a day. Like, they made up, that was quick deliberation. Okay. So he says, well, I talked to the other managers here and the owner, and you know what? You're right. You are underpaid. And if we don't pay you what you're worth, you're only going to go somewhere else where they'll pay you. And we don't need that. And we don't want that. So we've decided to change your salary to $55,000 a year. What do you think about that? I cannot contain my whole excited self. So I was like, oh my God, like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was so excited. And then I thought to myself, my boyfriend at the time was saying, say 55. Had I said 55, I might have gotten 60, right? And there was a lesson learned there. But over all of that, I was just super excited that I was brave enough and I had the courage enough to ask for that raise. And, really a lot of times, takes a lot. Oh, we've got a comment here from Jerry Robinson. Look at that. And look at that handsome man and his handsome picture on my chat. Takes a lot of self-confidence, but others ask for raises with expectations. Yes, yes. This is something that I talk to my mentor about all the time. And I was just on a mastermind this weekend with some really powerful women who are way, way older than me, who have like 40, 50 years of experience. And they have definitely said that there are cultural implications in how and why we don't ask for things. For example, for me, I was never taught to expect, right? I was only taught to be grateful for what I had. And then, when you have a lack mindset, you typically are like, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't say anything. And that's where you get the I don't want confrontation business from and things like that, where other people are like, they're expecting. And I was actually talking to a group of women who were saying men go in expecting like that they're going to get that. It's not no all in my feelings. Oh, what if they think this? Like, men are like, I'm going in, I'm having the conversation expecting it to be so. And it's interesting you mentioned that, Jerry, because I have actually, as I have become more mature as a professional and as a woman standing in my power, understanding the value of my voice and what I bring to the table, I have begun to expect, right? And expect doesn't mean greed. It doesn't mean that you think people owe you things, but it means that you know your worth. And when you know your worth, you expect to be compensated accordingly. But you're absolutely right. It does take self-confidence, but then there's a whole nother layer to that. Like self-confidence really unlocks the door, right? But walking through the door, you really have to know that you deserve a seat at that table. And that's where so many of us struggle. And then back to being at work, we're so angry because we don't stand up for ourselves. We don't become our own self advocates. What we expect are other people to just treat us the way we want to be treated through osmosis. Like what we tend to expect is that, okay, you spoke to me wrong, and the next day you're going to apologize and you're going to do the things I think you should do. And then when it doesn't happen, we harbor it. And again, a lot of that is cultural. It's how we were raised. It's the patterns and the behaviors that we are mimicking, that we watched other people do. And I see all the time, if you were raised by not so powerful people, it's very easy for you to not be powerful. It's very difficult for you to exert power because you don't know how to. And then when you do, all you've seen is confrontation, which is why I have coaching clients, friends, people that I meet, family, right? I don't want confrontation. Well, how are you going to resolve issues? And why is it confrontation? Me telling you what I want, what I need to thrive, to serve, to love on you more should not be confrontational. But when that's all you've known, that's how you were raised, then that's the only way you're going to approach it. So thank you for that comment. It's actually very, very powerful and so true. So, when we talk back about work, just another story here you made me think of, Mr. Jerry Cool Robinson. I thought about when I had an issue with how I was spoken to by one of my managers, and he was an Indian male. And I can remember when my company merged with this other company and we got on our first calls, we meaning my team, when we got on the call with him, because he was our new manager, all of us, the men and the women on my team, were all like, wow, like he talks to the women like they are dirt. Like it was obvious. Like the men got one tone, they got one set of instructions, the women got another. So I knew it was just a matter of time before I got that other set of instructions. And listen, I'm from West Philly. We don't do that. No. And by this time, I was owning my personal power. It's just a matter of time. It's going to be on and popping on one of these conference calls in a minute when he talks to me this way, because I will not tolerate it. My expectation is that you're going to speak to me like I'm a grown adult human being, not like I'm your servant and I cook your dinner. We're not going to do that. Well, the time came, and sure enough, this man spoke to me sideways. And it was about an issue that I was actually trying to hold out talking about because another manager had told me to do something he told me not to do. And, when I get into this meeting and he asked for a status, I said, well, I can't give you that right now. Well, he didn't like my answer and he talked to me like I was 2 years old. We don't do that now. Wait a minute. And it got really ugly. But what I did, and I continue to do to this day, is when people are disrespectful, I just won't give them anything back, because it takes two people for the exchange to continue. And ultimately, I had a very clear conversation. I'll tell you how extreme and dramatic I am. I actually went to work wearing all black one day, and I looked very somber that day. And when my coworkers would say, "Why are you having out black? Like, what's wrong?" And I'd say, it's a sad day. Something's about to get RIP'd up in here, right? And the disrespect, RIP to the disrespect. But I wore all black that day, and I had a tough conversation, but a powerful conversation. And it's interesting to take us back to the conversation here. I was mad for the 2 weeks it took for me to say I need to have this conversation. And I felt so much better after having this conversation. And here's the other thing. Now, let me give a disclaimer here. I'm not telling anybody who watches this to get loud, get jiggy with it, to get crunk, to get lit with your employer. I'm just simply sharing my experiences, my knowledge and my wisdom, and some research to tell you why people are upset in some ways that you can begin to shift from that. But I'm not telling you what to do. You are your own person. And you know, if you need that job and this job means a lot to you, and those networks and that paycheck and everything is important to you, do not go in there and cuss out your employer. Okay. Right. We all have to follow our path. But I'm sharing with you, disclaimer. Okay. I'm not telling you to go and do anything in specific. Okay. So, but I was willing to put my job on the line. Like I was like, if this doesn't get addressed, like I'm walking up out of here. I will not handle disrespect. I will not deal with it. It won't be tolerated. And here's the funny thing though. The gentleman that was disrespectful ultimately got this feedback in a survey at the end of the year where almost the whole team gave the feedback. So he came down from New York and he was like, I cannot believe. Now, he didn't know where these particular, survey results came from, but apparently out of the 15 of us he managed, it was more than half that said he's disrespectful. And it wasn't just women because more than half was men. So he got this feedback from the group as a whole. He came down, had lunch with us, and he was just like, I cannot believe that people think I'm disrespectful because I don't ever want to be seen that way. I don't ever want people to think that I don't respect people because I do. And if I have been disrespectful to any of you, I'm so sorry. And he was trying to like probe and get information from us. Like he would say, I can't believe you guys think I'm disrespectful. And we were all at the table. We were like, we're not going to tell you, right? But this was enough of a lesson learned. And so I've had several instances, Cynthia on here knows, of managers who were just wonderful people, but didn't realize that they were making people's lives miserable. So in this case, one way that you can shift or take advantage of processes is definitely in your reviews. If you have an opportunity to review your manager or anybody that's making you feel disrespected, take advantage of that opportunity because those things do come out on these reviews. I know that companies take these reviews very, very serious, but things you can control. Let's kind of go back to that for a second. The first thing I'm going to say, oh my gosh, because we're already 20 minutes in, but one thing I want to say is that one thing you need to do, I want to go back to that confrontation. You have to confront in a positive and powerful way. You have to confront the things at work that bother you if they impact your ability to be well, to be happy, to do your job effectively and safely, and with respect, right? If it's messing with your self-esteem, it's a hard conversation to have, but it's necessary. Because what happens, here's what happens when you walk around work, and let me know if you can relate to this. Here's what happens if you walk around work mad and angry, right? You walk around, you're mad at everybody. You're probably not the best team player. You have an attitude with people who have nothing to do with your issues, right? You're mad, like when Stephanie was mad at us. I didn't write that review, and I know people who didn't, but we all had to deal with angry Stephanie, right? So when you walk around, you're being mean to people that you shouldn't be mean to. And what I can tell you about in these industries, I don't care what industry you work in, but definitely in the technology industry, we all run into each other over and over again. I worked with Stephanie in 1996. She left that company in 2000. Here it is, 2007, she pops up at that company. When certain people got fired, they went and found other people they used to work with at different companies and started working there. It's a small space, especially the higher you get up in these organizations. So you definitely don't want to be like screwing up and having bad attitude around people that will ultimately be the most powerful people and useful people in your network. Okay. When you have an attitude, you miss out on fun. You miss out on fun. I remember being mad, and then we'd have a Christmas party or a day out, or we go geocaching or something funny, and I'm not going because I'm mad, right? So who does that impact? I'm the one stuck in the office doing work. Everyone else is having fun, right? So we miss out on so many opportunities when we are mad at work. And ultimately, you're going to miss out on the raise, the promotions, getting invited to the conference room for certain meetings because you're going to be known as the disgruntled employee. It's important that you find a way to start communicating when you're not happy. But when you have that conversation, make sure it's service based, it's productivity based, it's goal based, and it's not just, oh man, it's so and so, right? That's a whole nother set of issues that you have to learn to deal with. But when you go and you talk, this is impacting my ability to work well. This is impacting my ability to get my job done, or this is really stressing me out. And I've had to have that conversation with people. So one way you can shift, and it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a requirement that you learn how to confront situations. Now, there's a whole other dynamic to this, because sometimes you just may throw your hands up and be like, I'm so done. I'm actually looking for jobs on my way out here. And in many ways, let's keep it real, you don't even want to make it better. Like, you're just done. And that's a real scenario. Sometimes you're at places where you want it to work and you want things to get better, and other times you don't. And if this is really powerful here. I want you to listen if this is you. If you're in a job right now and you're just done, like, you recognize that there's nothing you can do, because at the end of the day, it is not your company. You do not run it. You do not sign the checks. You are not in the strategic development and goal and mission and visionary and road mapping meetings, right? You have no control over that. You recognize that, and you recognize that while you're here, they just want you to do your job and be quiet. Listen, you cannot be mad, right? That may make you mad, but you cannot sit and be mad and frustrated in that. I know that feeling. And let me tell you some of the things I did when I was in those types of situations. So I realized at my last company that once because we were acquired several times, and the more we got acquired, we were kind of like this tight, and all of us in the first organization had like, it was like this was the nucleus of the business, right? We were all attached to it. But the more we were acquired and the bigger the company grew, right? This is kind of what happened, right? We began to lose our attachment to the nucleus and our impact to decisions and who we were and the respect we had in the entire organization began to do this, right? And in that space that kept us this far apart were new people and new decision makers and new processes and things, right? And we were just out here. And as much as we tried to bring it back in, with so much resistance, right? We couldn't. So we stayed out here. What I learned in that moment was that I could get really angry and upset that, I used to be this close and I was respected, and my decisions were part of strategic road mapping and planning and all of that. But now in this new way, in this new company that's now 2-3 companies out, I realized that I couldn't be mad about that because this was the way it was. I also knew that at the time, because of some of the perks like flexibility, being so close to home, I wasn't ready to just venture out and find another job or step out on my own as a full-time entrepreneur just then. But what I did start doing is refocus my energy. I shifted worrying about what's going on here and what I can't change. So I shifted to what I could do for me to be happy in my life, to be happy at work. One thing I did was I just decided I can't fix this. I can't change it. So I'm going to just focus on my work and being excellent in it. I'm not going to walk around mad and disgruntled anymore. Like, literally, that was me, mad and disgruntled. And I'm just going to sit in here. I'm going to do my work and I'm going to do it well. But here's the good thing that happened from that. And I believe this as a principle for life. Where my talents and gifts are not welcome, I use them where they are. So as that pertained to being in a job that I hated, how I found my happiness was that I began to work on my part-time passion, or my passion part-time. I started writing my very first book. I wrote this book as a semi-disgruntled employee for a software company. So instead of, going home and trying to figure out how I could get back in and be strategic and slide my recommendations into another meeting and talk to the owner, nope, I'm going to pursue happiness. And the way I pursue happiness is I started working on my passion. I started dictating this book as I would drive on my commute, where before I was just on my commute thinking about everything that was going to suck throughout the day. I shifted and I channeled my energy to something productive, positive, and powerful, into publishing my first book. When I was at work on my lunch breaks, instead of sitting around talking to people about how much everything sucked, I would either walk and then eat, or I would eat at my desk and write. I was putting together training proposals. I started working on speeches and talks and presentations. But I even started going to the gym. So if you're not, you don't have this, burning passion to do something like write a book, right? I started going to the gym. Again, I started taking more walks. But my shift came when I said, I'm going to use this energy to make myself better, to do things that I enjoy, to exchange the negative energy for good energy, to exchange the negative conversation for positive and powerful chats with other purpose-driven people who were stuck in jobs, but we encouraged and motivated each other to work on other things outside of work. So that is really when I begin to find my happiness. But I'll tell you what's interesting. As I begin to spend more time working on me, writing my books, building my business part-time, taking more self-care at work. Thank you so much, Cynthia. You're right. Just makes for long and unproductive days. Absolutely. And you can see how when I made this shift, the days actually became very short. It's like, oh, shoot, I only have 15 more minutes to write my book, right? And then I felt that my days were productive. Not only was I focused on my work, doing that well, right? No longer, oh, this meeting sucks. Okay, I'm in it. I'm just going to be here. I'm going to give my best. I'm going to represent myself well, and then I'm going to go. But here's what's funny. Here's what's funny about this. When I actually started to shift my mindset from negativity to focusing on what's not right, what I would change, why no one respects me in terms of where I used to be in the organization, my whole office, where we used to be, and I channeled that energy, management saw a change in me. And what's ironic is that when I disengaged, they saw the great things about me they weren't able to see when I was engaged in negativity and being mad and disgruntled. And it was then that I began to get opportunities to lead. I was offered. So at one point I was like, I'm only working 36 hours a week, which is still a full-time job. And that was just in the office. I was working extra hours on the weekends, and I was definitely putting in over 40 hours a week. But I was offered, can you come back full time so that you can be a manager, so that you can be a supervisor, so that you can lead? And I said no several times. For one, I understood that for me personally now, my purpose and my passion were bigger than sitting at that job leading one or two people. I knew that I had an opportunity to serve the world. I knew that I had an opportunity to get my message out to the masses, to millions, right? And so I began to get empowered in that and had no desire to sit and be one or two people's manager at the software company. And again, remember, I also knew the dynamic that at the end of the day, even as a manager or supervisor, I was still going to be out here. So I took on leadership roles, but I refused to come back full time, because what I realized is that as I disengaged and understood my power more and began to tap more into that and be more positive and stay focused on who I wanted to be and what I desired. And I also, here's another point, I also did not expect that company to give me what I desired for my life. So many of us now are sitting in companies and relationships. Can I keep it real? We're sitting in relationships where we're looking to this person over here to give us everything we need. And the reason we're mad is because they're not giving it to us. And because we feel like they're not giving it to us, we feel like we're stuck. We feel like we're missing out. We feel like we lack, and it's their fault. But the minute I realize that this job is not responsible for my happiness, they're not responsible for my prosperity or my financial increase. Guess what? I'm responsible for that. So I need to start doing things, starting a business, even when I was outside of this. While I was working a full-time job with two small children, I got my real estate license. I was selling real estate. I was building a real estate portfolio. People, listen, I was a landlord. I had new tenants. I had people buying and selling houses. And at the same time, I was starting to put the pieces together of what a life ignited would look like before I knew it was a life ignited, right? Because this is what I've always understood, that my happiness, my growth, my prosperity, my next level, my new season is not the job or the requirement or the responsibility of anybody else's. It is mine. And so if you are sitting in an organization and you really see that your hands are tied, right? I'm not somebody who comes on here and says, you can always fix and change. Some things just can't be changed. Some things just are the way they are, but you have a choice, right? You can't change everything. That's just finite. That's a truth. You can't change people. And there are some situations you can't change, but what you can do is shift your perspective, shift your attention, shift your mindset, and begin to do work for you that's going to elevate, motivate, and empower you. So even if you are sitting in a job, now if you see pockets of opportunity to go in there and add value and change trajectories, absolutely do that. But then there are other times when that's just not possible. Use your energy. Focus on the good in the company. When I stopped being so disgruntled, I met the best of friends. Actually, work friends, two men, and we're still friends today. And you know what's interesting? I talk about them in my book, in my acknowledgments, right? This is how cool we were, right? But this would never have happened if I were disgruntled. I would not have been a good friend. I would not have been someone fun to talk to in the office, right? And I love their families. They have beautiful children. They have wonderful wives, and they're wonderful human beings. And I would not have got to know them if I were walking around mean, mad, and miserable. Miss Cynthia, you trying to take my job again? Yes. Self-awareness is one of the major points. Yes, being aware of who you are in every moment. And this is where self-care comes into self-awareness, because what you should be asking yourself before you get lit, crunk, loud, obnoxious, mad, sad, angry, before you take that next step and it's your turn to say something or to be a certain way or to react or respond, you should be asking yourself, is this thing I'm doing next, is this connecting or committing me to my best, brightest, bravest, most godly, healthiest self? And if it's not, fall back. Well, then what can I do? Self-awareness allows you to recognize where you can be more powerful, where you can use your talents and gifts, and quite frankly, where you can't. And where you can't, then what's my next best move? And that's what I had to ask myself. Now I can sit here mad all day. What's my next best move? Well, that's not it. I have to ask for a raise in that particular situation. And the other situation, I've got to let them know that you will not talk to Rhonda Kennard like you are crazy and have lost your mind, because we don't do that. I was not raised that way, honey. I was raised by Cynthia Coleman. We do not play those games. And Mr. Jerry Robinson, I know you know that now. We don't play that. We don't play. But I had to say, what is my next best move? I need to do something constructive and powerful to get me or start building upon where I want to be and who I want to be and who I desire to serve. And that's how this book was created. Okay. And I talk about that in here. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you are in a job or a relationship you don't like, shift by focusing on the positive that is there, changing your mindset and attitude, thinking about what are you really getting out of it, walking around mad, miserable all day. Nothing. You are wasting time, and time is so precious. We don't get that time back. The time that I spent mad at work, I don't get that time back. The time that you bring that negative energy to the next relationship, to the next thing. If you're at work and then you come home and you mad and disgruntled, right? Why do other people have to deal with that, right? So it's understanding that you can shift. you can shift for the better of you and for the better of the organization, that people you work with, and then those that have to be around you all day. And use your positive energy, use your talents and gifts. It's interesting because in this last company, I wanted to do training like desperately, but we had to have our training department out of New York. Well, I wasn't moving to New York to train. But you know what I started doing? I started saying, well, hey, I'll put together little trainings for my department. I'll onboard new employees, new hires. But you know what that allowed me to do? Practice what I'm doing right now. It allowed me to use new softwares when I was putting together trainings, because we had a small budget where I could say, I bought this, software that allows me to do PowerPoints and save them and store them. I was being prepared. I was being prepared for this. So I use those opportunities to serve at work, but also to build up a life ignited. Okay. So I want to know what your biggest aha or takeaway from this was, or what is your next best move if you are in a job or a relationship that you hate, or you're struggling, is so difficult. What is your next best move? Staying disgruntled ain't it, you guys. You've got to come up with something else, because that's not working. That's not working for you or anybody. And life is too short to be walking around mad and miserable all day long. So I want to know, as I take you out with my Life Ignited music. Yes, I'm going to take it out. Can you hear that? Yes, a life ignited. Okay, so I want you to think about that. Put it in the chat. Come back. If you don't put it in the chat, that's fine. Leave and think about that and what you're going to do to be more powerful, more productive, and more powerful at work. While you're waiting on your increase, while you're waiting on that new job to come, while you're waiting on that interview, while you're waiting for change, be powerful where you are today. Be grateful, be amazing, be committed and connected to the biggest, grandest, most boldest version of yourself. Work on her, work on him every day. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I honor your time. I appreciate you. Time is precious. You could be anywhere doing anything, but you're here with me. Thank you so much. Have a great day.